Alright, this is Trevor Treasure, just about 12:05 p.m. on Saturday, June 11th, 2011. We are in the pulp and paper pilot plant at North Carolina State University, and here is our vessel that is currently charged with market pulp. It's a little bit of a combination, calling it twilight market pulp, so it's got some softwood and some hardwood. It's bleached market pulp. We've got our dilution water in here. We've got our enzymes in here, and so what the enzymes are doing is breaking down this solid oatmeal looking material into monomeric sugars. The temperature in here is about 50 degrees Celsius, and we're heating it using a circulating hot water bath, and this reactor has a water jacket. You can see the level here. At this point, the solids content of this mixture is about 11%, and at that high a solids content, pulp cannot really be stirred. And so I'll try and turn on this mixture to show you that although the shaft is turning fairly rapidly, we are getting some jiggling of this oatmeal pulp and enzymes, but at this point the enzymes have not hydrolyzed enough of the solution to actually, get good turnover or anything like that. But probably after 6 hours or so, it will have thinned down enough and we'll be able to be mixed, and we'll get a video of that a little bit later on. So I've been just kind of stirring it by manual means using this piece of angle iron. So here's our hydrolysis vessel. This stuff has been going for approximately 2 hours at this point, from the time we put everything in here, and it was approximately at the 50 degrees Celsius reaction temperature. And as you can see, solids loading is still high enough that it quite can't mix yet. The shaft is turning, but it's not able to turn this mixture over quite yet, but that'll change here in the future shortly. Okay, so now after about 24 hours, the enzymes have broken the pulp down enough that the mixer can actually slowly turn over the reaction vessel. So they're clearly working and doing their jobs. Probably let this go for maybe a total of 2 or 3 days just to get every last bit of sugar out of it that we can. As you can see, it's slowly folding the pulp through. Okay, if we can look at the reaction vessel now, you can see that it is quite thinned down. And we want to try and keep the shear to a minimum because enzymes are shear sensitive. But yeah, the enzymes are certainly doing their job, making this solid material into a liquid, dissolving that polymer into monomeric sugars that we're going to ferment later and turn into fuel for our car. Okay, so it's been about 10 minutes is all since the last video. We've turned the motor shaft speed down to about 10% of its full speed, and it's easily turning over all of this material at this point now. So it's been going for about 24 hours, and we'll let it react for at least 48, maybe more. And then we'll filter off any of the remaining solids and take the sugars to be concentrated by evaporation, so we have a little bit less volume and less water to deal with, and then ferment them. Alright, it's Monday, June 13th, about 8:45 a.m., so we got maybe 2 or 3 more hours left on the hydrolysis, and it's probably pretty close to completion at this point. Looks about like it did last night, kind of a milky solution. So here in a few hours, what we're going to do is start draining it out at this valve, and I'll use some cheesecloth with a colander to try and filter out any, residual solids that might be in there. And then we're going to fill up probably about 7 5-gallon buckets with the sugar solution, at which point we can go and start evaporating off some of this water before going into fermentation. Okay, Monday, June 13th, 5:50 p.m. Hydrolysis is all complete, and we're staged and ready to do the evaporation now. So we've got 5 10x10 hot plates and 5 5-gallon glass jugs here that we're going to put our sugar solution in to drive off a bunch of the water. So we got 5 of those, and we've got 6 5-gallon buckets full of our hydrolyzed sugar solution. And I spent quite a bit of time this morning filtering out any of the residual solids using some cheesecloth and a colander. That's kind of what the sugar solution looks like at this point. It's fairly dilute sugar, probably 6% or somewhere in there. But so we got approximately 30 gallons of sugar solution, and then we're going to evaporate down to about 7 or 8 gallons so that we have a manageable size for doing our fermentation, and we'll have less water to deal with when we go into our fractionation column. So that's where we sit right now. Everything seems to be going well, and I'll get some more footage once we get the sugar in there and get it boiling. Okay, it's Wednesday, June 15th, about 11 o'clock in the morning. The evaporation process has been going on now for about a day or so, and we had a slight spill and lost probably 3 or 4 gallons of the dilute sugar solution, so we're probably down closer to 25 original starting gallons, and this is all of it. So I kind of added to these different jugs as the level dropped down. So as you can see, we're probably sitting, each one of these maybe has 3 gallons or so in them, so we got about 12 gallons of concentrated sugar solution. It's starting to go pretty slow. The second jug here I think has a lighter color than the others because it's got more of the residual solids that didn't get filtered out very well for whatever reason. Get kind of a close up, you can kind of see those solids turning over as this stuff slowly boils. But I think I'll maybe let it go for another couple hours and then transfer the sugar to some fermentation vessels, and we'll get that started and then let that go for about a week and then distill off what ethanol that we produce. Probably do a little bit of filtering before going into fermentation. As you can see, there's some chunky material that is formed during this evaporation process, and pretty sure that that's like coagulated protein So as the enzymes that were in the solution kind of get destroyed at the higher temperatures, the residual proteins kind of clump together and make like this biofilm mat. But other than the spill we had yesterday, things are going pretty well. Okay, June 15th, 2011, about 2:45 in the afternoon. So we got through evaporation fairly successfully and got our sugar solution that's now concentrated into our fermentation vessels, which are these two jugs here. We've got approximately 23 liters in each one. Right now the temperature is a little bit too high to add the yeast, and we still need to do the pH adjustment using sodium hydroxide. But temperature is about 140 Fahrenheit right now. We'd like it to get down closer to 95, something like that, before we add the yeast and let the fermentation start. So I've also done the titration calculations. The initial pH for both of the fermenters was in the neighborhood of 3.9, and then using a little bit of sodium hydroxide I brought it up to just around 6. And so we'll use those titration calculations to adjust the pH. The yeast should operate a little bit better at that higher pH compared to the 3.8. And then so now it's just kind of waiting around for it to cool down enough so that we can add the yeast, and then let the fermentation proceed for approximately a week, but we'll kind of just, you know, gauge that based upon how quickly the airlocks are bubbling. And then we'll go into distillation. So looks like the end is in sight. Hopefully we don't run into any more problems. Alright, just about 6 o'clock on Wednesday, June 15th, getting ready to begin the fermentation. I already put the yeast into fermenter number 1. I just wanted to get some footage since it's going to be kind of hard to see what that looks like, of me putting the yeast actually in, what it looks like. And as you can see, it's only been in there maybe a couple of minutes and it's already starting to off gas. So, but it seems like the yeast is loving that sugar, and temperature is right around 100 Fahrenheit. So here's kind of what the yeast looks like. I'll get some pictures too, might be kind of blurry in the, but anyways, the nutrients and the yeast are in there, been stored in the fridge. They're turbo yeast. And so I'm gonna go ahead and add this to reactor number 2. A nice brown sugar solution. Go ahead and pour these guys in here. That's kind of what it looks like immediately. And then we'll go ahead and put the lid on and get the airlock set up and be good to go. Should be done in, a handful of days or so. Monday, June 20th, about 9:45 a.m. Got the big pot still set up here. Just putting 1 liter through at this point, so fermentation looked like it was completely done this morning. Probably finished up sometime over the weekend, but just give it as much time as we possibly can to get as much ethanol as we possibly can. But here's the big pot still set up on a hot plate, and these water lines here are just for cooling. And we will use the thermometer here to target a temperature of about 78 Celsius at the top of the fractionation column, and that should give us a ethanol purity somewhere between 90 and 95, accounting for real world inefficiencies. But that's how we have it set up. So we put our beer down here in the bottom and it starts to boil, and you've got water and ethanol vapors that slowly make it up through this column. The column's packed with copper wool just to increase the surface area, and what you're going for is a temperature profile through this column. So it's going to be boiling at the bottom pretty hot, you know, close to 100 Celsius, but then you want to have a temperature about 78 Celsius at the top, and that allows, you know, the ethanol and water to separate from one another. And then this little thing off to the side is a condenser. We got cooling water running through it. And then this kind of opaque tube here is where our final ethanol product is going to come out into a small Erlenmeyer flask. And at this point it's kind of just heating up, columns getting up to temperature. I'm just getting a feel for how it's going to operate, and then we'll load it pretty much full and let it run, and get some more updates here in a little bit. Okay, it's about 7:15 a.m. on June 21st, 2011. We've got our pot still filled with approximately 20 liters of the Cellulosic beer. Hot plate's on right now. It'll probably take a fair amount of time to heat that up, but the insulation certainly helps. We'll monitor our temperature up at the top using a thermometer probe, shooting for about 78 Celsius at the top. Here's kind of our condenser setup, which is fed from this ice water bath cooler using a little aquarium submergible pump. So column's packed with copper wool just to give it additional surface area for things to reflux and condense out onto. And then once the ethanol water mixture that's, you know, somewhere close to 90 to 95% ethanol gets up to this point, and we know that based on temperature, condenser converts it back into a liquid, and it goes through that opaque tube down into a little Erlenmeyer flask, and I'll periodically empty that out so we don't lose too much ethanol that volatilizes. But yeah, I'll get a little more video once it's up and running and actually doing its fractionation. Probably take a little hour or so to heat up, and then get some more footage. Okay, 5:50 p.m. on June 21st, 2011. The column just got up to temperature, and it is percolating nicely. Getting like 2 or 3 drops, maybe more per second, coming into our little ethanol catch here. Got about 20 liters again of the beer in the bottom. Took about an hour for everything to get up to temperature, and we're sitting right at, it's probably a little blurry, but 76, so right below that critical 78 Celsius number. You can see all the condensation and stuff on these lines because of the ice water bath. Found that the ice water bath is pretty critical to doing this in a timely fashion. Otherwise, your condensation is a little bit slow, and so it just slows everything down. So that's important to have nice cold water running through the condenser. Also allows you to kind of jack up the heating rate a little bit for the rest of the column, but everything's functioning well. probably have to do one more batch. We've got about, oh, maybe 10 or 15 liters left of the beer, and then we should be good to go. So